So, 3 semesters into computer science degree, I could not write a for loop, like a basic for loop over a list. It was completely over my head, and I thought maybe programming just was not for me. And 4 years later, I owned the backend and the deployment at a startup, and I never really did the whole lead code grind to get there. I actually stopped somewhere around linked lists. So, this is not a look at my journey video. I want to genuinely tell what actually helped and what completely wasted my time, and a few things I honestly wish I had done differently. Because at high level, there was one thing that changed everything for me, and it is not really about working harder or grinding more. So let me go back. I joined a small college and the teaching was pretty bad. Like it was all about passing exams only, never about whether you actually understood anything. Until my second year, programming just did not click for me. C, C++, Java, it felt like a completely different language and I could not wrap my mind around that logic at all. Then Corona happened. I was sitting at home and one subject changed everything, databases. And I still remember exactly why it clicked. Like the queries itself just sounded logical to me. Like select this, where that, group by, order by. It was so close to plain normal English and it was close to math as well, which I was always good at. For the first time, I could actually reason about what was happening, right? And that was the pattern, even though I could not see it yet. The stuff I could reason about, databases and later systems, I picked it up fast and it actually stuck. The stuff I was just told to memorize, object oriented programming, a lot of the theory, I would cram it for the exam and forget it a week later. But here is the part I want to be careful about. This does not mean you give up on hard things. When something does not click it, the answer is usually not to quit. It is to find a different explanation or a smaller version of the problem or an actual reason to use it. The point is just this: do not confuse memorizing an explanation with actually understanding it. And once databases clicked, everything kind of snowballed. I found a proper hands on web development course that was genuinely a turning point, and suddenly I got front end, back end, deployment, how the pieces fit together. This is not a promotion, I genuinely liked the course. If you want, I can link it up in the description. Then I found system design videos on YouTube and I finally understood servers, load balancers, sharding, and all. But here is the honest part: I understood all of it in theory. I had never actually applied any of it. And that gap is exactly where the job hit me. So I got my first job in 2022, and the first few months were genuinely rough because learning and actual job are two completely different things. When you are learning, there is no deadline, no one waiting on you. Now suddenly there is a huge code base you have never seen, and you have to ship real features inside it. And this is a skill nobody really teaches you. Reading a large code base, it is genuinely hard. You spend years learning how to write down code from scratch, but the actual job most of the time is reading code that somebody else already wrote. So let me tell you the method I use now. You find one starting point, one API, one request, you trace it all the way through, and you build a mind map in your head. This is the API layer, this is the service layer, this is the data layer, this is where it gets deployed. I ask what are the main features, how are they split, and how they talk to each other. And notice this is not about memorizing the codebase, it is reasoning your way through a system you have never seen before. Same muscles as the databases. You will not understand everything in a week, but you stop being lost for months and you start asking the right questions in days. Okay, so I could read the code a little now, but the code I was writing was still pretty bad. A lot of my PRs were getting rejected. I was not thinking about latency, I was not thinking about proper API design, the contract between the front end and the back end, none of it. And this went on for good 8 months. Let me give you one concrete example. Let's say you have a product listing page. When I started out, I would just write an API that returns all 10,000 products at once. And that is just wrong. It is slow on the backend, and the front end has to render all of it, right? The right thing is filters, pagination, only send what the screen actually needs. These are the things that do not show up in any course. They show up in PR comments and in actual shipping to real users. And here is what I did, and I think this is one of the most useful things I did in those 4 years. My first instinct, honestly, was to explain why I wrote it that way, to defend it. But once I stopped defending every single decision and started reading the comments to find the pattern instead, where I'm going wrong again and again, that changed everything. I fixed those patterns one by one. And one more interesting thing that I did was not only my PRs, like I would look at my colleagues' PRs as well and see what are all the comments that they are getting. I actually made a note out of it, like what are all the common PR comments that my manager used to give or my peers used to give for others. And I made sure once I write the PR, I would look myself and check all those issues and make sure that What I wrote does not have that. Because at high level, a good PR review is a free senior engineer sitting right there, telling you exactly how to get better. And it is right there for free. If you can just get past the ego and read them for the pattern, that is genuinely the fastest way to improve. That is how I went from getting rejected constantly to being trusted with the whole data layer. Now, the biggest shift for me was not technical at all. I had a manager who was really supportive, and he kept telling me one thing: do not just say yes to every feature. Understand what we are actually building, understand the business outcome, and push back if you think it is the wrong way to do it. And that completely changed how I work because just writing the code is not the job. The code is only a tool to get the outcome right. If you do not understand how it affects the actual client or the business, then you are just typing, and that is not really the job. So I started sitting with the product managers, going through the plans, asking why we are building something before I built it. And a few small habits helped me way more than I expected. I started reviewing other people's PRs because you pick up different approaches without having to make every mistake yourself. I started writing down what I worked on every single day because 6 months later, you will genuinely not remember what you fixed or what impact it had. And I started looking at the whole sprint, not just my own ticket, because your work almost never sits in isolation. And later, when AI came into the picture, I joined a company doing AI chatbots. It was the same approach all over again. I learned enough about the model to use it well, but I put my actual depth into the problem I was solving, figuring out what the user is really asking, giving the model the right context, all the stuff that has to happen around it. Not the internals of the model, the problem right in front of me. And slowly the work itself kept changing shape. A single feature might touch 4 or 5 services at once. And the hard part was not code anymore. It was holding all the dependencies in your head and moving a change through without breaking something else. That is also where cost got real for me. Our Elasticsearch bill was getting huge, and I worked on changing how the data was stored and retained. Because a system can be running perfectly and still be a bad system if it is costing way more than it needs to. And eventually, I ended up owning the whole backend and the deployment. But honestly, the exact tools were never the point. I got there because I had learned to trace an unfamiliar problem, read the logs, ask the right questions, and own it when something broke. Same reasoning muscle, just a much bigger scope. Okay, now the part that might make people a little angry. In 4 years of actual work, I never once found a good reason to spend months grinding lead code medium and hard problems. I tried it and somehow around linked list I just stopped because I could not connect that grind to the kind of work I actually wanted to do. And I want to separate two things here because this is where people get me wrong. Data structures absolutely matter. I use arrays, maps, sets, queues, basic complexity thinking all the time. But being solid on those fundamentals is a completely different thing from being able to crack a unfamiliar algorithm puzzle in 40 minutes. Those are two different skills. And most of my work was the first kind: reading existing code, designing APIs, modeling data, debugging things in production, deploying safely, building actual product features. So I made a deliberate trade off. I did not optimize myself for the companies with 5 algorithm rounds. I went for startups that cared more about what I had built and how I actually think. That closed some doors and I accepted that. But it also let me own real systems way earlier than I otherwise would have. And the real lesson here is not DSA is useless. It is that every learning path is optimizing for something. So before you spend months on one, just ask which opportunity is this preparing me for? And is that actually the opportunity I want? That one question saved me so much time. And it works the other way too. When someone wants to over engineer a feature we do not need, you ask the exact same thing: do we actually need this right now? And most of the time, honestly, the answer is no. So, looking back, what I would have actually done differently, honestly, two things. I would build real projects while I was learning instead of watching course after course and never applying any of it. I would be proactive from day one instead of waiting through 8 months of rejected PRs to figure it out. But the core of it, I would not change at all. Because just 2 days ago, I was recording a video for this channel, a deep dive into how Redis works internally line by line, and partway through it, I stopped because I realized I was just reciting facts I had read somewhere. I was not actually understanding them, and I was not being honest with myself. And that is the exact same person from 4 years ago, the one who could not memorize object oriented programming, who stepped away from lead code, who only really learned databases because he could reason about it. So, if there is one honest thing I can leave you with, it is this: do not mistake memorizing an explanation for understanding it. Courses taught me the names, production taught me the consequences. So, find an entry point that actually makes sense to you, build something with it, and let real problems show up where you need to go deeper. That is what took me from not being able to write a for loop to owning backend systems today. And that is what this channel is about, not pretending to know everything inside every box, but understanding why the box exists, when it helps, and what it costs. If that is how you want to learn this stuff as well, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.